The billionaire replayed the voice note 37 times before sunrise. Not because the girl was flirting. Not because she knew who he was. But because for the first time in years, someone spoke to him like he was human. There are some mistakes that ruin lives. And then there are mistakes that completely change them. The voice note was only 38 seconds long. That was it. 38 seconds. But by the end of that night, it had already changed 2 lives forever. My name is Sophie Bennett, and the strange part of this story is that I never meant to send him anything. Not the voice note. Not the message. Not my heart. Especially not to a billionaire. At 26, my life looked nothing like the romantic movies people post online. I lived in a tiny apartment in Chicago with peeling kitchen paint and a broken heater that only worked when it wanted to. I worked double shifts at a flower shop during the day and edited podcasts at night to pay my mother's medical bills. Most days, I survived on coffee and exhaustion. But despite everything, I still believed in kindness. Which honestly felt embarrassing sometimes. Because the world doesn't reward soft people anymore. It uses them. Still, I stayed soft. My mother used to say, "Don't let hard times turn your heart hard too." So I tried not to, even after life gave me every reason to. The night everything started, Chicago was drowning in rain. I had just finished a 14-hour shift and was standing under a bus stop trying not to cry after another argument with the hospital billing office. Mom's treatment costs had increased again. I was already behind on rent. And my younger brother Tyler had secretly dropped out of college because he couldn't afford tuition anymore. Everything felt like it was collapsing slowly. That's when my best friend Emma texted me. "Call me now. Emergency." I sighed tiredly and sent a voice note while stepping onto the bus. "If this emergency is about your toxic ex again, I swear I'm blocking you. Emma, you deserve better than men who apologize with good morning texts after emotionally destroying you. Also, please eat something besides iced coffee today. And call your mother back. Bye." I hit send without checking the number. Big mistake. Because 5 minutes later, a reply appeared. "Unknown number. I think you may have sent this to the wrong person." But strangely, I think I needed to hear it. I frowned immediately. Oh no. I quickly typed back. "I'm so sorry. Wrong number." A typing bubble appeared. Stopped. Appeared again. Then, "You sound kind when you're angry." I stared at the message. Confused. Who says that to a stranger? I almost ignored it. Honestly, I should have. But something about the reply felt strangely genuine. Not creepy. Not flirtatious. Just lonely. So before thinking too much, I replied, "You sound emotionally exhausted for someone I accidentally texted." 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, "Fair observation." I laughed quietly to myself on the bus. First real laugh in days. And somehow, the conversation continued. No names. No photos. No personal details. Just 2 strangers talking through messages while rain hit the windows outside. At first, it felt harmless. But there was something unusual about him. Most people online try too hard. Too funny. Too charming. Too polished. This stranger didn't. He answered thoughtfully. Asked real questions. Actually listened. And strangely, it felt easy talking to him. By midnight, we were still texting. At one point, he asked, "What do you do when life feels impossible?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying honestly. "I keep going anyway." A minute passed. Then another message appeared. "That sounds lonely." My chest tightened unexpectedly. Because somehow, a complete stranger understood me too quickly. I typed slowly. "Maybe. But stopping doesn't pay hospital bills." 3 dots appeared again. Stayed longer this time. Then, "You take care of everyone, don't you?" I looked out the rainy bus window quietly. Someone has to. No response came for several minutes. Then finally, "Who takes care of you?" That question hurt more than it should have. Because I honestly didn't know the answer. The bus finally reached my stop. Before leaving, I typed one last message. "Good night, mysterious wrong number." Almost immediately. "Good night, Sophie." I froze. I never told him my name. My heartbeat slowed. How do you know my name? A reply came seconds later. Your voice note metadata. I relaxed slightly. Then another message appeared. Mine is Ethan. And somehow, that simple message mattered more than it should have. On the other side of the city, inside the penthouse office of Crosswell Technologies, Ethan Vale replayed the voice note again. And again. And again. Not because he was obsessed. Because he couldn't remember the last time someone spoke with such honest emotion around him. At 34, Ethan was one of the youngest billionaires in America. Tech magazines called him brilliant. Investors called him visionary. The media called him untouchable. But none of those people actually knew him. Because behind every article, every interview, every expensive suit, Ethan was exhausted. Money had made his life easier, not happier. People smiled differently around wealthy men. Conversations became artificial. Relationships became transactions. Trust became impossible. And loneliness? Loneliness became expensive. Ethan sat alone in his dark office staring at Chicago's skyline through glass walls while Sophie's voice played softly again. You deserve better. Nobody talked to him like that. Not employees. Not business partners. Not the women who dated him because of magazine covers and private jets. But this girl, this exhausted stranger on a rainy bus, spoke with honesty, warmth, life, and for reasons he didn't fully understand, he suddenly wanted to hear her voice again. The next morning, Sophie woke up late after barely sleeping 4 hours. Her phone buzzed while brushing her teeth. Unknown number. Did you survive your stressful life? She smiled despite herself. Barely. Did you survive whatever mysterious rich person problem you definitely have? Several minutes passed. Then, interesting assumption. You text like someone who owns expensive watches. Ethan laughed quietly in his penthouse kitchen. And you text like someone who carries the emotional stability of 3 people. She rolled her eyes reading it. But secretly, she smiled. Days passed. Then weeks. And somehow, the wrong number became part of her routine. Morning texts. Late-night conversations. Voice notes during lunch breaks. But the strangest part? Neither of them rushed to exchange social media, or photos, or meet. It felt safer this way. More honest. Without appearances. Without money. Without expectations. They connected through something much deeper. Emotion. One night, Sophie sent another accidental voice note while half asleep. You know what scares me? Her tired voice whispered softly. That someday I'll become so busy surviving. I'll forget how to actually live. Ethan listened silently from his office. And for the first time in years, his chest hurt emotionally. Because he realized something terrifying. He already had. The billionaire had never cried over a voice before. But the night Sophie accidentally sent him a recording of herself breaking down in tears, he boarded a flight without thinking twice. 3 months. That's how long Ethan and I talked without meeting. 3 months of voice notes. Late-night conversations. Comfort during terrible days. And somehow, without ever seeing his face clearly, he became important to me. Dangerously important. I knew the sound of his laugh. The way his voice deepened when he was tired. The pauses he took before answering emotional questions. But I still didn't know who Ethan Vale really was. Not completely. And honestly, that mystery became part of why I trusted him. Because online, people usually reveal too much too fast. But Ethan? He protected himself carefully. At first, I assumed he was just private. Maybe shy. Maybe emotionally guarded. I had no idea he was hiding an entire empire. One Friday night, I stayed late at the flower shop after closing. My manager had cut my hours again. The hospital bills kept increasing. And Tyler still pretended everything was fine even though I knew he was working construction jobs secretly to help Mom. Everything felt heavy. Too heavy. Rain hit the windows outside while I organized roses in silence. That's when Ethan called unexpectedly. We rarely called directly. Mostly voice notes. I answered softly. Hey. His voice came through warm and calm. You sound exhausted. I laughed weakly. Is it that obvious? Yes. A pause. You've sounded sad all week. Nobody noticed things like that anymore. Not really. People heard words. Ethan listened to silence. I'm okay, I lied quietly. No, you're surviving. His voice softened. That's different. Something inside me cracked slightly hearing that. I sat down slowly behind the counter. Do you ever get tired of pretending you're fine? I whispered. Silence filled the line for several seconds. Then Ethan answered honestly. All the time. And suddenly, I didn't feel alone anymore. We talked for almost 2 hours that night. About pressure, fear, loneliness, dreams we abandoned because life became too expensive. And at one point, Ethan quietly asked, what would make you happy right now? I laughed softly. Sleep. Financial stability. Maybe therapy. No, he said gently. I mean really happy. The question stayed in my chest. Because honestly, nobody had asked me that in years. I looked around the empty flower shop quietly, then whispered. Feeling like someone chooses me without needing something from me. The silence afterward felt emotional. Heavy. Then Ethan whispered something that made my heart beat slow. Someone will. I closed my eyes. Because somehow, part of me already wished it was him. That terrified me. Over the next few weeks, things between us deepened emotionally. We started sending longer voice notes, telling childhood stories, sharing fears we'd never told other people. Still no photos. Still no social media. Still no meeting. And maybe that's why it felt so intimate. We fell in love with personalities first. Not appearances. Not status. Not fantasy. One evening, after another terrible hospital appointment, I sat outside in my car crying quietly. I thought I had ended the voice recording before sending it. I didn't. 30 seconds later, Ethan received a voice note. Not words. Not conversation. Just the sound of me crying. Soft. Broken. Trying desperately not to fall apart completely. The second Ethan heard it, something inside him panicked. Because during all these months, Sophie had always stayed strong. Even when exhausted. Even when hurting. But this sounded like someone reaching their limit. He called immediately. Again. 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 I didn't answer. Because by then I had turned my phone face down and buried my face in my hands. I was tired of being strong. And for the first time in years, I genuinely didn't know how much more I could carry. Meanwhile, 2,000 miles away in New York, Ethan stood inside his penthouse office replaying the crying voice note with growing panic. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. He called again. No answer. Again. Nothing. Then suddenly, he made the most impulsive decision of his life. He grabbed his coat, called his assistant, and said, prepare the jet. I'm flying to Chicago. His assistant nearly choked. At midnight. Yes. For tomorrow's investor meeting. Cancel it. The assistant stared in disbelief. Because Ethan Vale never canceled important meetings. Ever. But Ethan barely listened. Because all he could hear was Sophie crying. And suddenly, money, meetings, business deals. None of it mattered. For hours later, Ethan landed in Chicago during heavy rain. The city looked cold. Lonely. Exactly how Sophie sounded lately. He sat inside a black SUV outside the flower shop address she once casually mentioned weeks ago. Lights were off. Closed. His chest tightened. This was insane. He knew that. He didn't even know if she'd want to see him. But something inside him needed to know she was okay. Then suddenly, the apartment building across the street opened. And Ethan finally saw her. Sophie Bennett. Wearing an oversized hoodie. Hair messy from rain. Carrying grocery bags while looking completely exhausted. She looked nothing like the glamorous women Ethan usually saw around him. And somehow, she looked more beautiful than all of them. Not because of perfection. Because she looked real. Ethan watched quietly from the car while Sophie struggled with one of the grocery bags. Without thinking, he stepped outside. Need help? Sophie froze instantly. His voice. Her heart stopped. Slowly, she turned around. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Because suddenly, The stranger from thousands of voice notes was real. Ethan looked exactly how she imagined and completely different at the same time. Tall, dark coat, sharp features, tired eyes. But his eyes looked softer than she expected. More human. You came, she whispered. Ethan looked at her carefully, almost emotionally. You sounded like you needed someone. That sentence nearly broke her all over again. Rain fell softly around them. Cars moved in the distance. But everything suddenly felt still. Then Sophie laughed weakly, disbelieving. You flew across the country because I cried? Ethan answered quietly. You've spent months taking care of everyone else. A pause. I didn't want you alone while falling apart. And right there on the sidewalk, something inside Sophie's heart completely surrendered. Not because he was rich. Not because he was attractive. Because nobody had ever shown up for her like that before. Then suddenly, headlights flashed behind them. A black luxury car pulled closer. And before Sophie could ask questions, a nervous-looking assistant stepped out holding an umbrella. Mr. Vale, the hotel arrangements are ready. Silence. Sophie blinked slowly. Mr. Vale. Ethan's expression changed instantly. Like a secret finally collapsing. And suddenly, everything started making sense. The expensive watch jokes. The guarded personality. The constant business trips. The emotional exhaustion. Her voice became quiet. Who are you? Ethan looked at her carefully. Then finally answered honestly. The truth. A pause. Someone terrified you'll stop talking to me after tonight. And standing there in the rain, Sophie realized the stranger she accidentally fell for wasn't just rich. He was one of the most famous billionaires in America. The hardest part wasn't discovering the man I loved was a billionaire. The hardest part was realizing he still looked at me like I was the only honest thing left in his world. I didn't invite Ethan upstairs that night. Not because I wanted him gone. Because my brain couldn't process what was happening. 1 minute he was Ethan, the stranger who sent thoughtful voice notes at 2 a.m. The man who remembered how I took my coffee. The person who listened when life hurt. And the next minute, he was Ethan Vale, the billionaire whose face occasionally appeared on magazine covers near grocery store checkout lines. I stood frozen in the rain staring at him while his assistant awkwardly waited beside the black car. You're really him, I whispered. Ethan's expression tightened slightly. Not proud. Not arrogant. Just tired. Yes. I laughed softly in disbelief. All this time I thought you were maybe a lawyer or a tired therapist. A weak smile appeared briefly on his face. I considered telling you. But you didn't. No. Rainwater slid slowly down my jacket sleeve while silence settled between us. Then quietly, I asked the question hurting inside me. Why? Ethan looked away toward the street lights. Because for the first time in years, his voice lowered softly. Someone talked to me without wanting something. That answer hurt more than if he had lied. Because it sounded painfully honest. People used him. Expected things from him. Admired the money before the man. And suddenly, I understood why Ethan hid behind a wrong number. Still, fear slowly crawled into my chest. Because rich people lived in different worlds. Different realities. People like Ethan didn't fall in love with girls carrying grocery bags in the rain. That only happened in movies. And movies lied all the time. I should go, I whispered quietly. Pain flickered across Ethan's face instantly. Sophie, I just need time. He nodded slowly, even though disappointment filled his eyes. Okay, then softly. But none of the conversations were fake. My chest tightened painfully. Because deep down, I knew that already. That was the problem. I went upstairs that night emotionally overwhelmed. And somehow, seeing Ethan in real life made everything worse. Because now I knew exactly how dangerous my feelings had become. Over the next 3 days, I ignored almost every message he sent. Not out of anger. Out of fear. Fear of getting hurt. Fear of becoming another woman swallowed by his world. Fear that eventually I'd realize none of this could actually last. But Ethan didn't stop trying. Every morning. Did you sleep? Every night. Please eat something today. Simple messages. Gentle ones. Never pressuring. And somehow, that patience slowly broke my defenses again. On the fourth day, Emma finally cornered me inside the flower shop. "You look emotionally constipated," she announced. I blinked tiredly. "What?" "You heard me." She crossed her arms dramatically. "Now explain why you've been staring at roses like they personally betrayed you." I sighed deeply, then finally whispered, "The wrong number guy is Ethan Vale." Silence. Emma stared at me, then laughed. "No, seriously. I am serious." Another silence. Longer this time. Then, "The billionaire Ethan Vale?" "Yes." Emma grabbed a nearby chair dramatically before sitting down. "You accidentally emotionally adopted a billionaire?" I covered my face in embarrassment. This cannot be my life. Emma leaned forward immediately. Wait. Important question." She pointed at me seriously. "Is he nice in real life?" That question hit harder than expected. Because despite everything, the answer came instantly. Yes. Not rich. Not famous. Not attractive. Nice. And maybe that mattered most. Emma watched my expression carefully, then smiled softly. "Oh no." "What?" "You love him." I immediately shook my head. Too fast. Too defensive. Emma laughed knowingly. "Sophie, you literally look heartbroken because a billionaire cared about you sincerely." I stared down quietly. Because the terrifying part? She was right. That night, Ethan finally sent a different message. "I'm leaving Chicago tomorrow. But before I go, can I see you one last time? No pressure. I just don't want our story ending through unread texts." I read the message at least 20 times. Then finally replied, "1 hour." Ethan answered immediately. "I'll take it." An hour later, I walked into a quiet bookstore cafe downtown. And there he was, sitting near the back corner, looking strangely nervous. Which honestly shocked me. Powerful men usually looked confident everywhere. But Ethan? He looked like someone hoping not to lose something important. When he saw me, his entire expression softened. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey." For a moment, neither of us knew what to do. Because voice note intimacy feels very different in person. Then Ethan gently pushed a warm coffee toward me. "Vanilla cinnamon latte," he said softly. "You always order it when stressed." My chest tightened immediately. Because he remembered. We sat quietly for several seconds before I finally whispered, "Why me?" Ethan frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You could literally talk to anyone in the world." I laughed weakly. "Models. Celebrities. Rich people." Something dark crossed Ethan's expression instantly. "That's exactly the problem." I stayed quiet, listening. Most people meet Ethan Vale first. His eyes stayed on mine. Not Ethan. The honesty in his voice felt heavy. Real. "But you." A small emotional smile appeared. "You fell in love with my worst days, my tired voice, and my emotional damage before ever seeing my face." My heartbeat slowed painfully. "And honestly," Ethan whispered, "that terrified me." "Why?" "Because suddenly your opinion mattered." The cafe noise faded around us. Then Ethan said something that completely broke the last wall around my heart. "Sophie, I've had people admire my success my entire life." A pause. "You were the first person who cared whether I was lonely." Tears burned instantly behind my eyes. Because loneliness recognized loneliness. That's why we understood each other so easily. Then quietly I asked, "Did you ever think I'd stop talking to you after finding out?" "Yes." The answer came immediately. "Every single day." Silence settled between us softly, warmly. Then Ethan reached into his coat pocket carefully. "I brought something." He handed me a folded piece of paper. Confused, I opened it slowly and froze. It was a printed transcript of my very first accidental voice note. The one sent to the wrong number. I looked up at him speechless. Ethan smiled faintly. "You told your friend she deserved better than people who hurt her." His voice lowered. And somehow, that sentence stayed with me. My chest ached emotionally. "Do you know how many people speak honestly to billionaires?" he whispered. I shook my head slowly. "Almost nobody." For the first time since meeting him, I finally understood something important. Ethan wasn't searching for entertainment when he kept texting me. He was searching for something real. And somehow, through one accidental voice note, we found each other. Weeks passed after that night, and instead of pulling apart, we became closer. Ethan started flying to Chicago whenever possible. Not with cameras. Not publicly. Quietly. We ate cheap street tacos together. Walked through bookstores. Talked for hours in parked cars. And somehow, despite the wealth difference, it worked. Because emotionally, we met each other in the exact same place. Loneliness. One snowy evening, Ethan visited my mother at the hospital for the first time. I expected awkwardness. Distance. Instead, he sat beside her bed listening carefully while she told embarrassing childhood stories about me for almost an hour. And when Mom laughed weakly afterward and said, "You look at my daughter like she saved something inside you," Ethan became very quiet. Then softly answered, "She did." I looked away immediately before he saw tears in my eyes. Months later, Ethan stood beside me on a rooftop overlooking Chicago's skyline. The same city where one accidental message changed everything. Snow fell softly around us. The world looked quiet, peaceful. Then Ethan turned toward me slowly and whispered, "Do you ever think about how close we came to never meeting?" I smiled faintly. All because I sent a voice note to the wrong number. Ethan laughed softly. Then his expression became emotional. "No," he whispered. "I think it reached exactly the right person." And standing there beside him, I finally realized something beautiful. Love doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives accidentally, quietly, through tired conversations at midnight, through honesty, through emotional connection, through a voice note never meant for you. People think love stories begin with perfect timing. Ours began with a mistake, a wrong number, a tired voice, two lonely people surviving different kinds of pain. And somehow, that accidental message became the most important thing either of us ever received. Because real love isn't about status, or money, or perfect lives. It's about finding the one person who hears your voice and stays. If this story touched your heart, comment. Some mistakes are meant to change your life. Share the story with someone who still believes real love can happen unexpectedly. Follow for more emotional love stories filled with romance, twists, heartbreak, and unforgettable endings.